All right, so I'm going to give a little bit more information about like just being in the trades this long. One of the things I want you guys to remember, especially if you get into the realm of specializing or troubleshooting or assembling high dollar equipment like $30,000 semi truck engines, or heavy equipment can be even more, I'm sure. So let me just say this: the smart guy in the room doesn't know everything. He knows where to find the answers. So when I say that, I mean keep track of the information that you search out, print it if you can, and if not, write it down and keep those as your notes along the way, because you'll find as you get to really understand, like once you work on enough stuff, you can only remember so much, right? So I can work on every diesel engine and I know them all, but I don't know the specs for every one, and I would have to look them up. The reason for that is because if I interchange those in my mind, I can cause a catastrophic problem. Same thing can be said for electrical. You go probing some pin with your power probe, or last year that was the power pin and now it's the ground, and or vice versa, and now you have problems you didn't have. And what I'm trying to get at here is that when you get into electrical specialists, in particular, I can speak on this. You've got to do a lot of the legwork of understanding the circuit before you approach it. And when I keep saying this, what I mean is, I'll give an example. I had a customer one time that had a fuse on a pretty brand new vehicle. I had been to training for this brand new vehicle, and I went out and the fuse was blowing, in fact. And I asked him, what I did is I printed the schematics. I went upstairs, and then I came back down after looking at the circuits, and I asked him, had he done anything different, or could he tell me more about it? Because truck drivers are really good at understanding little subtleties. So he said that he had installed a refrigerator, but that he didn't do anything, like with the power. He had ran it off an inverter. And anyway, so I asked him, did you screw it in? And he said, yes, I screwed it in back there. And he happened to put it right through the power, and that's what was happening. But we saved that guy a ton of time versus me tracing it out and pulling the panels and visually. That's what I'm telling you guys. You can't visually see it. You have to understand, if I've got 5 volts here and 3 volts here, it fell somewhere and it is in from here to here. So that systematic approach means I start here and work my way back, counting each place that has an excess of resistance. I'm not really talking about that today, but what I'm trying to say is I've got to map the circuit before I go after it, and I can't remember every single spec for every ohm resistance value within every coil, okay? Always look to the manufacturer specification. I'll give you one last example, and then that'll be it. So the Cummins ISX engine, the front gear train has to be timed, but also has to be the bearing, the backlash has to be not backlash, but the load, the gear load has to be set to 10 thousandths. Now you don't want it too loose because you'd have a bunch of slop, and it'd be too tight. It would start to wear the facing, beaching. It would start to rip apart the gear teeth. So they used to recommend it was 10 thousandths of an inch, and now they recommend it's 4 thousandths of an inch. So if you're trying to be that guy who remembers, no, I know it's 10 thousandths. You've got to be evolving and be willing to go. If I'm going to build an engine at any point, I'm going to look at what's present as far as information. And I'll give you one more last tip here. These ECMs, they start out at let's say, for instance, we have a BZ90008.14 on that ISB ECM. So once that 0.4 is the first version that thing was released with, what people don't tell you is that there are many fault codes, probably thousands by now, but surely hundreds of fault codes that have nothing to do with the fault at all. And the first thing you do at the dealership is make sure that software is updated to the next best software. Now, if for a warranty claim, you have to prove that there is some correlation between the fault codes you have and the update, and that it did remedy the situation. But it's always good to look to see if there wasn't some revision, 30, 40 revisions from now, that don't fix some of these erroneous fault codes that we've been chasing from the beginning. So that's some secret sauce. So hopefully this is helpful to you guys. And understand, never remember the spec, remember the source. All right, have a good night.